All right, this is what the bill looks like, just so people can see it. But it's pretty stupid, just being honest. So it's basically saying that brokering is this, this, and this, which is so brokering is you get a fee for buying, selling, negotiating real estate, which I do agree that is what it is. That is the definition of brokering. I think real estate brokers should do fine with that, right? But the thing is, and including advertising for sale and equitable interest in a contract for the purchase of real property between an owner and purchaser, right? Okay, so here's the thing here. And the gurus are going to do one thing, I'm going to do another thing, and this is what the truth is, all right? Okay, wait a second. It says if I get a commission. What does commission mean? Oh, okay, that's what commission means. What does real estate mean? In the law, it gives you the definition of all these terms, right? National Accredited Institute. They give you all this stuff, right? But is there a definition for advertising, right? No. Right? Advertising. There's nothing on this law about advertising. So they made this advertise for sale. And so the only definition we get in this law is advertise for sale. And so what does advertise mean? So if I go to the Webster's definition of advertise, if I go to the actual definition of advertising, right, I'm using English. So I go to Google. All right. So I guess Google will be the best one for it. What is advertising? Advertising is describe or draw attention to a product, service, or event in a public medium in order to promote it, right? Okay. To make a fact known, right? So there's two definitions of advertising. Do I make it known that this is a property that is for sale? Or is advertising me drawing attention in a public medium? We don't know, right? The realtor definition in Kentucky is just to make known, but it's also to make known that it is for sale. But that's the definition if you're a realtor advertising. Now, this law is for people that are not realtors, so we have no definition of that. And so my only guess is advertising is if I start using it on a public medium. But the problem is I get no definition. They make it impossible to understand what the of it on there, right? And I break it says you get civil penalties if you don't, but like they don't explain anything. They don't explain one thing. Includes the advertising for sale. So if I advertise for sale and an equitable interest in a contract between a property owner and a purchaser, that's not good too, right? But here's the thing. This is the funniest part. It's like there's so many ways to go around this, right? So it's like, first of all, what if I don't have the property under contract? What if somebody I know tells a cash buyer about the deal? That's not advertising. Or what if a cash buyer comes to me and says, hey, I'm looking to buy some properties. Oh, I got a property under contract I'm buying. And then they're like, okay, so you're buying this house? Yeah, well, can I partner up with you on this one? Let's do it together. I'm like, oh, sure. I'm just going to sign it to you. Okay. Like that actually goes around that law. And so this whole Kentucky bill is so crazy. But like they make it so crazy. And so the gurus are going to say wholesaling in my definition, and they're not lawyers, right? They're realtors. They want to do their little realtor spiel, right? But it's like this law is so easy to go around because you just double close, you do all these things. But it's the advertising. It's not the assignment of contract. And so one thing I want you to understand is I have a screenshot on here. And I do want to talk about this screenshot. All right. This is the biggest pet peeve I have in the wholesaling real estate community. Okay. So let's go here. HB62. All right. Just show you really quick. Let's see. I'm trying to break this down. All right. I don't see it on here, but I have the screenshot somewhere else. But basically what someone asked, I think they deleted it, but they literally asked this, right? Oh, they asked about it was this funny thing. It was like, what's going on with this Kentucky bill? They're banning wholesaling. I'm like, what? That's not the bill. Like I just showed you the bill says, right? And so it's ridiculous. So Maryland's they are trying to pass a bill that you have to have a license to offer more than two properties or put two houses under contract without a license. And I've read it. It's very vague on purpose. And there are a couple ways to do it. Now, obviously, possibly in that market, you should get a license, but honestly, there are ways around it. And I'm talking to my lawyers right now on what I can or can't say, because that law is it's written very, very weirdly that I don't want to go tell people to do something that's technically illegal. So I'm working with lawyers there, but there are theoretical examples of that Maryland law, which is always very interesting. Let me go pop up that bill. I'll pop up and show you that bill too. But that bill's in Maryland, and Maryland's literally there as we speak are writing laws to stop people from renting properties for too much, the actual market value. And I always think it's funny when they do that. But let's see where that publication is on that one. Hold on, pop it up. Let's see. And so this is what the bill says from Maryland. I'll show you guys. This one's a lot trickier. This is not the Kentucky bill, all right? It's an act, the purpose of altering the definition to provide real estate brokering services, to include engaging the business of real estate wholesaling, to require an individual engages in real estate to be licensed relating to the provision. And so let's break down the title. For considering selling, buying, exchanging real estate, or collecting rent, right? So the first one is you providing a service for it. No. Considering assisting another person to locate, right? Engaging in regular business. But regardless whether the activity is engaged in for another person, engaged in the buying or selling, offering to buy or sell or to of real estate, or otherwise dealing in contracts, including assignable contracts for real estate or options on real estate, 2 or more occasions in a 12-month period. So there's a lot of ways to go around that, but it's written so vaguely that for most cases in this law, it's insane. But for most cases, you can get around by just double closing. And I'm going, no, you can't double. It says 2 occasions. I can tell you right now. All right. I can tell you right now that this law, it does not have to do with that, because I know people in Maryland that will FSBO. All right. They will offer to sell their house twice, or some guys looking to buy a FSBO and they're looking to buy 2 houses on a for sale by owner because they can't get one. They want to buy their own house. Is that person breaking that law? They're going to make provision. If you're buying a house, then no, you can't do it, right? And so Illinois had this big problem too. Illinois had the same law. And I'm just going to tell you something. It's probably not going to be the best thing for me to say. Some gurus are going to be angry at me, but it's true. If I am a guy and I own a Chicago pizza joint and I'm doing very well with my Chicago pizza joint, I try to buy, let's do leasing. Leasing's even easier. I lease out my own personal house by myself with this other guy. I sign a lease. That's engaging, number 1. Number 2, I sign a lease for my pizza place. My pizza shop's doing well. I have 2 leases for my pizza shop and me. I can go and make another pizza shop in Illinois, and I sign a lease with an owner. Theoretically, Illinois says you can go to jail because you signed 3 leases. You're brokering real estate here. You're acting like a realtor. I just signed a lease to another pizza shop. That's illegal. Jail, right? No. The thing is, Illinois wrote that law so you can't wholesale. But if you're going to do it for something that is not that, they're like, eh. And so Illinois wrote that law, but they don't enforce it at all, because we have something called the Constitution Clause in the United States of America. And let me brag what the Constitution Clause is. Constitution Clause, USA. Oh, it's the Contract Clause. So go here. Let me pop it up. Constitution Clause is Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. I believe in the Constitution. Some gurus don't, but that's just me. But it says, no state shall enter into a treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or appraisal, coin money, emit bill of credit, makes sense, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. I'm not even getting into that one, because that was part of the Constitution that we can only deal with gold and silver in debts, and then we get off this gold standard. But I'm not getting into that, all right? Let's not talk about that, okay? But it says, pass any bill, ex facto law, or you can't pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts or to grant any title of nobility. So the Constitution Clause provides no state may pass a law impairing the obligation of contracts. And the law in the context may be a statute, constitutional provision. All right. And so what this basically means, more or less, is you cannot stop people from creating. And there's also judicial decisions on this. And so let me see this one. What did Chief Justice Taft said? Obligation is the agreement where they come from the parties. The obligation comes from the law and makes the agreement binding on both parties. So that's how they've analyzed it. Chief Justice Marshall, I think Thurgood Marshall, did that. And so he's basically saying on this that, like, hey, you know what? You can't stop people from writing contracts. Impair. The obligation are impaired by law. And so you cannot stop. All right. Private contract. Naturally not all-inclusive, obviously, but if it's a valid contract, the U.S. Constitution will protect it. Let's see, municipal law. And so basically what it says here is it prohibits state governments from specifically creating legislation to usurp private contract rights. It is limited by the ability of state to, however, limited by the ability of state governments to legislate and interfere with those rights under their police power. Now, police power does have a weird definition to it, but let's look up the definition of for states to regulate behavior enforced with their territory for the betterment, health, safety, or morals of general welfare. I don't think the police power will go into wholesaling, which obviously is not. It's basically, that's kind of a, what do they call that? They call that martial law. We're not in that. But basically what the U.S. Constitution allows us to do is it prohibits state governments from specifically legislating to interfere with private contract rights. That is the contract clause, Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. And so when states create laws like Maryland and in Illinois, these states know they're doing that, but they don't enforce it because they know if it ever goes to court, they'll never win. And so people are just wholesaling in the states, no problem. They're actually just wholesaling there. And I don't know about that. But for most people, if it ever went to the court, they'd not win. We do have a conservative majority in the Supreme Court. And with them doing that, the conservative majority is usually, I'm not getting political, but a conservative majority in the Supreme Court will always ride to what the Constitution says. And the Constitution's pretty clear there that you can't stop people from going into private contract. And so Kentucky knows this, and Kentucky does believe in the Constitution. So they stopped you from advertising a contract, which is different than writing up a contract. Now, Maryland's trying to stop you from engaging in the purchasing of it or dealing with contracts on more than 2 occasions. And unfortunately, that law might probably pass, but there's ways around it. Most people just can get their license there, which honestly you might have to do if you want. But what I could say is it won't be enforced. I can guarantee it. There's not one person, there's not one. Okay, I've challenged every guru on this. There's not one wholesaler I know that has gotten in trouble from the Illinois law in 5 years. It's been 5 years since that law passed. Not one person has ever gotten in trouble because they know it's against the U.S. Constitution clause and they don't enforce it. That being said, Maryland, they're not going to enforce that one either. But just go around it. Just get a lawyer to sign off on everything and you'll be fine. But yeah, that's my thoughts on wholesaling regulation and laws. It's so insane. And I've had not one person, and people tell me, oh, but it doesn't matter. I don't care, right? Constitution clause has us protected. So that's it for that. Let's answer some questions really quick and see how I can help the people out. And so Facebook says that's what's keeping me from Oklahoma. Like, I mean, because you listen to a broke guru and they're driving you crazy.